What if everything you believed about justice, duty, and sacrifice was put to the ultimate test in a courtroom where the truth couldn't be spoken? They say justice is blind, but sometimes she just refuses to look. On a gray Tuesday morning in San Diego Superior Court, a man in a worn blazer sat silently at the defendant's table. His weathered hands rested calmly on the polished wood, betraying no emotion as the prosecution painted him as a dangerous predator. His name was Logan Price, 54 years old. Navy SEAL, retired, Bronze Star with Valor, Purple Heart, 24 years of distinguished service to his country, and now charged with felony assault. The prosecution called it an unprovoked attack on an innocent man. The security footage was crystal clear, they argued. Price had tackled a well-dressed gentleman in broad daylight on a quiet residential street in Oceanside, pinned him to the ground with military precision, whispered something in his ear, then walked away without taking anything. No robbery, no apparent motive, just inexplicable violence from a man who should have known better. The victim? One Edgar Nassar, a successful real estate investor with an unblemished record, glowing character references, and a high-powered legal team that painted him as a pillar of the community. The media circus was relentless. Former SEAL snaps in suburbia. From hero to menace, the fall of Logan Price. When warriors come home broken. Every headline cut deeper than the last. But Logan didn't say a word to the cameras. He didn't grant interviews or issue statements. He just showed up in court every day with his overworked public defender, nodded respectfully to the judge, and watched as his reputation, built over decades of selfless service, was systematically destroyed. What nobody knew, not the press, not the jury, not even his own lawyer, was that Logan had recognized Nassar the moment he saw him 3 weeks earlier. Not as a real estate mogul or community leader, but as something else entirely. Something from a classified chapter of his life that the government had never officially acknowledged. It had been 14 years since Operation Cobalt Rain, Northern Syria, 2010. A joint special operations task force strike on a suspected chemical weapons facility hidden in the rugged mountains near the Turkish border. The mission had been brutal and precise. 5 confirmed enemy kills, 2 tragic civilian casualties, and 1 missing person who had vanished into the fog of war. The missing person had never made it into the official debriefs, never been listed in the mission logs. His existence had been scrubbed from every record, every report, every memory that mattered to the Pentagon. But Logan remembered him with crystalline clarity. Codename, Gorgon. He was the shadow operator, the fixer who handled logistics, surveillance, and elimination. The kind of man who didn't fight on the front lines but cleaned up what the battlefield left behind. Ruthless, efficient, and according to classified intelligence reports, killed in a targeted drone strike 6 months after Cobalt Rain. Except he wasn't dead, because Logan saw him, older, heavier, but unmistakably the same cold eyes, standing outside Murphy's Corner Cafe in Oceanside on a sunny Thursday morning in March 2024. And in that moment, every instinct Logan had honed over 2 decades of service screamed danger. Gorgon wasn't dead. He was living under a fabricated identity, embedded in American society, and he was operational again. Logan had no official clearance anymore, no contacts in the intelligence community, no legal authority to act. But instinct dies hard, and for Navy SEALs, threat recognition isn't just training. It's survival programming burned into your DNA. He began following Nassar with the patience of a predator. Patterns emerged quickly, meetings in seemingly random locations, a parking garage downtown, a bench in Balboa Park, a 24-hour diner off Interstate 5. Always brief exchanges involving unmarked envelopes. Always with a man who walked with a pronounced limp, always watching from a distance like a professional counter-surveillance operator. Logan documented everything he could without sophisticated equipment: license plates, times, locations, faces. He was building a case that no one would ever be allowed to see. And then, on that fateful Thursday, Logan witnessed something that shattered his restraint completely. He watched Nassar approach a teenage boy outside Lincoln Charter School. The kid couldn't have been more than 15, backpack slung over one shoulder, earbuds in, completely oblivious to the danger. Logan watched as Nassar handed him a small package, which the teenager stuffed into his backpack without a second thought before walking toward the school entrance. In that moment, Logan's training overrode every other consideration. Whatever Gorgon was planning, it now involved American children, and Logan couldn't stand by and watch. Logan moved with the fluid precision that had made him legendary in the teams. He approached Nassar as the man was walking back to his BMW, timing his approach to coincide with a gap in foot traffic. "Excuse me," Logan said, his voice carrying the unmistakable authority of command. Nassar turned, and Logan saw the recognition flicker across his face, not of Logan specifically, but of the type of man he was facing, the predator's instinct recognizing another apex predator. "Do I know you?" Nassar asked, his accent carrying just the faintest trace of something that wasn't quite American. Logan struck without warning. Years of muscle memory took over as he executed a perfect takedown, controlling Nassar's fall and pinning him to the sidewalk with minimal force. To any observer, it looked like unprovoked violence, but Logan knew better. He leaned close to Nassar's ear and whispered the phrase that had haunted him since Syria. "Tell Damascus the shadows remember everything." It meant nothing to anyone watching, but to Gorgon, it was a message from a ghost, proof that his past had finally caught up with him. Logan released him and walked away, knowing that within hours his life as he knew it would be over. The arrest came exactly 2 hours later. 6 squad cars, full tactical response, as if they were apprehending an international terrorist rather than a decorated veteran. Logan didn't resist. He'd known this moment would come the second he chose to act. His court-appointed attorney, Maria Santos, was competent but overwhelmed. She begged him to explain his actions, to give her something, anything she could use to build a defense. "I can't discuss the details," Logan told her during their first meeting. "It's classified." "Mr. Price, you're facing 25 years in prison. Your military record is impressive, but it won't save you from video evidence of assault." "I'm protecting people," Logan replied quietly. "Even now. Even like this." Maria stared at him across the metal table in the county lockup. "Protecting people from what? From whom? Help me understand." But Logan just shook his head. Everything about Cobalt Rain was buried beneath layers of classification that went all the way to the top. Speaking about it wouldn't just end his freedom, it would compromise ongoing operations and endanger assets in the field. "What if I could get you a deal?" Maria pressed. "Manslaughter, 5 years with good behavior. You'd be out in 3. "No deals," Logan said firmly. "Some things are more important than freedom." The trial was swift and merciless. The prosecution had everything they needed: clear video evidence, an upstanding victim, and a defendant who refused to explain his actions. They painted Logan as a dangerous individual suffering from PTSD, a veteran who had snapped under the pressure of civilian life. Character witnesses testified on Logan's behalf. Former teammates spoke about his integrity, his selflessness, his unwavering commitment to protecting others. His commanding officers praised his service record, his decorations, his exemplary conduct over more than 2 decades. But the prosecution's response was devastating in its simplicity. Valor doesn't excuse violence. Service doesn't grant immunity from the law. The defendant committed assault. Period. They had video. They had a victim. And Logan had silence. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours. Conviction seemed not just likely, but inevitable. Then came the USB drive. It arrived at the courthouse on a Friday morning, delivered by a courier service that had no record of who had hired them. No return address. Inside the envelope, a military-grade encrypted drive and a note typed on government letterhead. The mission didn't end in Syria. Some debts can only be paid with truth. Protect him. A friend in the shadows. The judge, Honor Patricia Kellerman, initially resisted viewing the drive's contents, but Logan's attorney argued that it could contain exculpatory evidence, and the prosecution, confident in their case, didn't object. What they found changed everything. The files, marked with DoD classification stamps and dated between 2010 and 2011, contained surveillance footage from multiple sources, phone intercepts, financial records, and most damning of all, high-definition video from a CIA black site facility showing a man conducting enhanced interrogations on suspected terrorist operatives. When the interrogator stepped into better light, adjusting a lamp to shine directly on his prisoner's face, there was no mistaking who it was. Edgar Nassar, or rather, the man who had been calling himself Edgar Nassar for the past decade. The footage wasn't just damning, it was impossible to ignore. Here was the prosecution's star witness, their innocent victim, conducting what could only be described as torture. The timestamps placed it just months after Operation Cobalt Rain had officially ended. But there was more. Financial records showed regular wire transfers from accounts linked to known terrorist organizations. Communications intercepts revealed coded messages discussing attacks on American soil. And most chilling of all, recent surveillance footage showing Nassar recruiting American teenagers as unwitting couriers for what appeared to be a domestic terror cell. Within 24 hours, everything changed. Federal agents appeared at the courthouse. The prosecution's case evaporated overnight. Charges against Logan Price were quietly dropped, and the entire trial record was sealed under national security provisions. There was no press release, no public apology, no acknowledgement that a grave injustice had almost been committed. Just a quiet dismissal and a legal black hole that swallowed the entire affair. Edgar Nassar disappeared that same day. His real estate office was suddenly vacant. His phone number was disconnected. His bank accounts were frozen by federal order. No one saw him leave. No one knows if he's still in the country, though intelligence sources suggest he may have been extracted to a black site facility for extensive debriefing. The terrorist cell he'd been building was quietly rolled up over the following weeks. 17 arrests, multiple weapons caches discovered. A planned attack on a San Diego shopping mall during the holiday season prevented. Logan went home to his modest ranch house in Fallbrook. He tended his vegetable garden, attended veterans' breakfast meetings at the local VFW, and never spoke publicly about the trial. When pressed by curious neighbors or persistent reporters, he would simply say, "Some things are better left buried." But the story spread anyway, the way such stories always do in the tight-knit special operations community. Among those who know, the operators, the intelligence officers, the support personnel who keep America's secrets, Logan Price became something of a legend, not for his decorations or his combat record, but for something far more precious, his willingness to sacrifice everything rather than betray his oath. They still talk about him in secure facilities around the world. The man who stood alone in a courtroom, facing decades in prison, unwilling to speak the words that would have saved him. The warrior who chose honor over freedom, duty over self-preservation. And they wonder, as Logan himself still wonders, who sent that drive? Who was watching from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to act? Who had kept that evidence for 14 years, knowing that someday it might be needed? Some say it was a former teammate from Cobalt Rain. Others believe it was a handler from the intelligence community, someone who understood that burning good operators is bad for business. A few whisper that it might have been Logan himself, that he had somehow orchestrated the entire affair as an elaborate trap to flush out a dangerous enemy. But Logan knows the truth is simpler and more profound than any of those theories. Somewhere out there, someone still believes in honor. Someone who understands that some battles are worth fighting, even when no one will ever know you fought them. Someone who kept the files. 3 months after the trial, Logan received a plain envelope in his mailbox. No return address. Inside was a single photograph, a group of teenagers walking safely into Lincoln Charter School, backpacks slung over their shoulders, completely unaware of the danger that had once stalked them. On the back, in careful handwriting, mission accomplished. Semper Fi. Logan smiled for the first time in months. Some battles never make the news. Some heroes never get medals. But sometimes that's exactly how it should be. If stories like this move you, tales of quiet heroes, hidden battles, and the price of duty, then you found your home. Echo Bravo brings you the stories that matter, the ones that remind us what real service looks like. Hit that subscribe button and join our community of those who understand that some warriors never stop fighting and some battles never make the news.